All right, so today we're going to go through the same section we went over yesterday. We're just going to add a little bit to it. So yesterday we talked about reflections, so moving an entire figure across a given line of reflection. Today's just going to extend a little bit of that topic and talking about line symmetry. So line symmetry is basically talking about the fact that for given figures, there are times where we can draw lines through the figures that would cut them exactly in half, meaning both sides of the line would end up being mirror images of each other. So a figure has line symmetry, or we might call it reflectional symmetry here and there, if we can find at least one line that makes a figure its own reflection. So if I were to fold across that line, both sides would be identical. Anytime we can find that line of reflection, we call it a line of symmetry. So in the figure below, we notice that we put this vertical line straight through the middle of our isosceles trapezoid. If I were to fold the two sides of this trapezoid together, everything would match up exactly the same. So the left and the right side are exactly identical. Now there are times where you might feel like there might be more lines because there could be more than one line of symmetry within a given figure. So you can always test ones out. So for instance, I might think, well, maybe horizontal will work. So if I go horizontal right through the middle here, does that also provide a line of symmetry? Well, if we look at that, the top and the bottom, if I try to fold those two pieces together, it's not going to work out. For instance, this point right here, when it folds up or reflects across, is going to come straight up to right here. It doesn't match up with anything on the top side. So in that case, that would not be a line of symmetry, which means we'd have to eliminate it from our picture. Whenever we have these figures, we can only put in lines that actually cut it exactly in half. So in this case, we have line symmetry, but there's only the one line. Some other examples to look at, if we kind of look at this blue X on the left here, as far as lines of symmetry go, I could start by looking at vertical. So we can always kind of go vertical, horizontal, diagonals, just kind of check out the obvious ones. So if I draw my line in here, we can see that the left and right side would be exactly the same. So that would provide a line of symmetry. So the first part of the question says, do the figures have line symmetry? So the first part of my answer would be yes, this has line symmetry. Now the second part says, if so, draw all the lines of symmetry. So I've got this vertical line that I know cuts the left and right in half. But in this case, I actually have a horizontal I can do because the top and bottom would match up perfectly. And then not only that, but I notice that I can go diagonal this direction and diagonal this direction. Oops. And so in this case, while it has line symmetry, it actually has 4 different lines that we can create. So any of those lines would cut our figure exactly in half. Both sides would be identical. Now if we look at the K, as far as K is concerned, if I try to go vertical, so if I tried to go vertical through the top or the middle, we notice that the left and right side aren't going to match up. So I have these diagonal lines on the right, straight vertical line on the left, so that would not be a line we could use. But if I go straight through the middle horizontally, then I notice that the top and the bottom would match up perfectly. So in this case, yes, we have line symmetry. If I try any other lines, they're not going to work. So in this case, I just have the one line that I can work with. So most of the questions in this type of problem is going to be like, does it have line symmetry, yes or no? And then which lines are there? So only include lines that are actual lines of symmetry. If we look at these next examples, the parallelogram here on the left in gray, a lot of times as we kind of look through this, we can just kind of test out. If I try to go vertical here, left and right side are not going to match up. This point that's on the left would reflect all the way over to here, which doesn't match up with anything. So that vertical line is not going to work. We can try horizontal, but the same thing's going to happen. And then a popular one is to try to go diagonally. Now, if I'm going to go diagonally, because this can sometimes be a little tough to visualize, when I go to fold, this line right here would have to match up perfectly with this line right here. So when I go to fold across that diagonal, these two lines are going to fold over each other. But we can clearly see that this side is nowhere close to the same size as this side. So in that case, that is not a line that we'd be allowed to use. So in this case, we would simply say, does it have line symmetry? No. And then there are no lines to draw in, so we just leave it blank. As far as the star is concerned, we can see right away that we have this vertical line that goes through, left and right side would be identical, but because this star is the same all the way around, that means any point that I have can become a line of symmetry. So as I'm looking at all these different pieces here, I can go through any of the points along the outside, and I'm going to create a line for each one. So in this case, yes, it has line symmetry, and I actually have 5 different lines that I can attach to it. In our last 2 examples, we got the letter Z and kind of this flag symbol. If I look at the letter Z, if I try my typical lines like horizontal and vertical, vertical definitely doesn't work, and we can see that basically we'd end up with a backward Z. Horizontal sometimes is a popular one, and while the top would come down and match up exactly with the bottom, we notice that this diagonal piece right here, when I reflect it down, would actually become a piece that looks like this. And so all I would do is just form a little triangle there. So that's not going to work. If I try to go any of the diagonals, again, we're not going to get everything matched up perfectly. So in this case, the Z has no lines of symmetry. Same thing with the flag on the right side here. As we look, if I try to go like vertical or horizontal, I've got these little pieces that are not going to match up. When I reflect across, it's going to have to go here. Nothing to match up with, so I'd end up with a reverse order of my figure, which is not what we want. We want the exact same figure when we reflect. So in this case, just like with the Z, this one does not have any lines of symmetry. So with that, you should be able to attack the worksheet for today. As you work through the worksheet, again, ask any questions that you need in class, email, or check the answer key when it comes up, and try to get any of that figured out as you progress.